hey, there you are. Welcome back to DeAnn's Art Studio. I'm DeAnn Meely. Welcome back to Painting Tips and Coffee with DeAnn. Did you miss me? I know. I wasn't here for a couple weeks. I've been super busy. Well, I was here, but not on YouTube. I had several commissions to finish up and was super busy at the studio, but I'm back right now. And to make up for it, we're going to do something just a little bit different this time. I've been receiving a lot of comments and questions regarding some of the things I've been posting, the pieces I've been posting on social media. I've been painting several flower compositions for clients, and I also painted a table, some yellow roses on a white table that a lot of you have been interested in. So since everyone is trying to paint roses, not everyone, but I know most of you are, and the journey, it can be a little difficult, it can be frustrating, but frustrating is good because you're learning. But the rose is the queen. It takes a lot of practice, and you have to be willing to make some changes and accept a lot of pretty flowers, a lot of beautiful roses along the way until you get where you want to be. And then when you get there, you're going to want to change the look. You're going to want to change your approach. You're going to want to change your brush. I'm always doing it. And my friend and colleague, David Jansen, on his YouTube, I'll put a link down below. He posted in February 30 days of rose challenges, and then he's been posting several different compositions, as have I, and it's just been stimulating a lot of interest and a lot of questions, and we love the questions. And first thing you need to know, though, is that all the genre you paint, it all helps with your roses. Painting roses will help with landscapes and wildlife and portraits, and everything that you work on with landscapes and portraits will turn around and help your roses, okay? So I thought what I would do is I would demonstrate painting a rose, not a composition this time. I'm going to upload a composition later in the week, but painting a rose using a single brush. Now, at the end, toward the end, you can go back as it's starting to set up. You can go back and in with like a number 10 flat if you want to pull a little bit more finite detail, but using a larger brush will help you to be a little more casual. You have to kind of lower your expectations because you can't get in there quite as tight and as detailed as you want with a super big brush. So this to me helps you relax. And it was just, to me, it was a turning point is when I said, okay, I'm going to paint this entire flower, this entire rose with this large brush. And then I'm going to set a timer, and I'm going to time it for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes in and out, and what you have is what you have. And then you go to the next one and you work at it, all right? So let's go down to our board and let's get real big. Oh, I know, don't forget your coffee. This is decaf, and I'm thinking I should have opted for the full lead in this one tonight. But anyway, grab your coffee and let's go down. Down to the board we go. All right, so I have, this is a 9 by 12 or, 8 by 10. You can use whatever extra boards you have. I have these laying around all the time. I keep them prepped and ready to practice on. And here's one of the boards. I just, I'll work out and casually paint a rose here and there. I usually have paintings on the back. Well, there's one, a red one, but I have probably 50, 60 boards over at the studio, and then lots and lots of other boards. This is from probably about a year or so ago, so you can see the change, hopefully. So it's all a journey. But if you haven't painted roses for a while, and if I'm, for me, if I'm working on a house painting portrait, portrait of a house, a commission, or a wildlife or landscape, I might take the extra paint I have and drop in on one of my boards and paint a couple roses so that I keep my skills, or I might use it to discover different hues or whatever. So this is a good idea to have some boards prepped and laying around for you to just grab and paint. Now, I think it's a lot easier to prep your background in a warmer tone, especially if you're using, if you're going to paint yellow roses, red roses, and you can always cool it down. Also a medium value, like a 5, 6. This might be a 4, 5, maybe a little dark. You know, acrylics die down just a little bit. My palette, now I have used this palette today, but I refreshed a little of the colors. I do have the basic 6, Hansa, Naphtha Red Light, Red Violet, phthalo blue, black and white, but I've divided it still like I showed you in previous videos. I'm keeping all my warm tones to the left and my cooler ones to the right. Hansa yellow I've been using, that I may have to get a little more out, and have yourself a nice dollop of white, okay? I've added other colors. This is the medium white, the yellow oxide, Darylide yellow, pine green. This is English red oxide, brown madder. This is one of my favorite colors. Naphtha red light, naphtha red, quinacridone violet, dioxazine purple, cerulean blue, phthalo blue green, black, and of course your white. Okay, and I'll pull stuff over, and when we do the more of a composition, I'll make sure I list those colors out for you. Alrighty, so let's go down to the board. Now I'm going to use this 3/4 inch flat. It's a good size brush. It's been used a lot. I have another one that I've used even more. Y'all have seen this one. My students always make fun of me because this is just my favorite brush. I use it on canvas. I'll use it to make very, very casual flowers. You can see how casual they'll be, but I thought I would go for my newer one with you guys tonight. The deal with this is learning to use the corner of your brush, the toe of your brush, the ball of your brush, the flat of your brush, being able to control this big brush to get into tighter spaces, big and loose, small, holding, I never really paint up real tight. I'll, relax and go back on my brush if I want to be super casual. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to dip my brush into some water, and I'm going to come in. Now, I want to give myself a very casual feel right from the get-go. So I'm going to come in with some yellow oxide, alrighty, and maybe I'll put just a little, lighten it just a little bit with some white, and I'm going to come in and just give myself just some casual feel, nothing real committing, alrighty, yellow oxide, and you can rub that off just a little bit. And I'm going to put a little more on because I do like to have a little bit of, when I'm working with this larger brush, I like to have just a little bit of moisture on my board and some paint to work into, okay? Now, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, well, I know I'm going to paint rose, so I'm going to pick up a little bit of that pine green. And the pine green has a little bit of intensity to it. I put it just a tad of white, and I'm going to pick up just a little bit of any of your reds. This happens to be English red oxide that I had out. You can use your brown madder. You can use naphtha red light, will overtake it pretty quick and tone it. So, be aware of that. And I might pick up a little bit of water or extender and just kind of put just a little green in there because I know it's going to be a flower, okay? Now, if you're working on one and it gets a little bit too wet for you, you can always go and work on a couple different roses at a time. And in a composition, I find that that's really the easiest way for me to paint, okay? Now, I'm rinsing out my brush just because I don't want the green in my brush super heavy when I start into this flower. Now, I'm going to come in with this medium white. I do this, I have a lot of several approaches to everything, but I'm going to come into medium white, and I'm just going to just casually work an area to identify kind of where my rose is going to be, and I'm going to paint out beyond where the rose is going to be, okay? Just to kind of give some more movement. Alrighty, and then I'm going to rinse out again. Then I'm going to come in with the yellow oxide, work that into my brush, and I'm right there with my medium white, okay? And I'm going to just kind of strike in a little bit of shape for my rose, okay? That might be just a little wet. I had some water in my brush, so I'm going to pick up just a little more paint and just kind of work in right where that warm white, medium white is, okay? And that just gives me a nice warm, creamy color for my flower. And you can move it out and beyond to soften yourself up. That'll give you a little bit more casual feel, alrighty? I'm gonna come in with some brown madder. Now, brown madder is what I'm gonna use as the center color. It's warm. And then I'm gonna put just a little bit of red violet into it. All right, and I'm loading it, if you can see there, I'm loading it kind of on the corner of my brush. I could probably use a little more paint, so I'll pick up just a little more paint. Don't be skimpy with it. And I'm going to establish where the center of my flower is, and it's going to pick up the paint that's there. Even though these are acrylics, they're pure, they're thick, they're full-bodied, and you know, they don't dry super fast. All right. Now, I have been running the air conditioning in my filming studio here, so I may find that things are a little drier than what have been the last few days because it was raining a couple days ago. I'm going to come in with that same similar mix, you know, brush mixed. It's the red violet and the brown madder, and I'm just going to give myself a nice shadow down the cooler side of my rose and establish right where my bowl. I'm establishing the bowl of my rose. I'm going to rinse my brush out just a little bit in water and pinch it off. I'm always pinch wiping, okay? And I have this tilted up on a paint jar there. Now I want to start, I'm kind of modeling color. I already see a rose there, and you should too. You should in yours as you're working along. Now remember, you can paint with me. I recommend that you watch through it one time. And then you paint, pause, but don't try to copy. Kind of see where your brush takes you. Okay, that's super important. Now, I'm going to come in with a little more yellow oxide, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of Hansa yellow just to intensify it. And I'm going to strike in. I just want some movement of some more yellow. Okay, movement of yellow in that rose. Movement of yellow. Okay. Little variation. Remember, variation is the key to interest. And while I have that color, I am going to come in at the back of my rose and go ahead and extend out. Just kind of paint in my back. And I'm rocking and rolling my brush, okay? So really, I know it's hard to see on a video, but try to watch exactly what my brush is doing. I'm going to come down and put the reaching petals, reaching area. I want to move that color. If any time you start to lose your bowl, that's one of the biggest deals we all have. We've all faced this issue. You want to restate it. Just come in and restate some color. Okay, restate your color. Restate the bowl. Now, I feel like I want a little bit more intensity, just some variation of my yellow. So I'm going to come in with my Hansen. You can see I'm just running my colors right here, different intensities. And I'm going to come in and just kind of work just a little bit more of that yellow right up to the front of the bowl. And I did pick up a little bit of extender because my paint is pretty sticky, but it's been sitting out here for quite a while today, okay? Be careful you don't get it too wet with the extender if you choose that. You can always use water, and as you paint, you'll start seeing what works for you in different climates, okay? And, you know, there's no right or wrong. You just got to work with it and fill your toolbox with lots of options so that you can figure out what works best for you, alrighty? All right, and I'm going to restate my colors in the back, and I'm always just going back and forth, all right, in my center. And I'm going to come in and just kind of, and I use my finger often, all righty, using my finger quite a bit, all righty, using my finger. Love to use my finger, okay? Now, I'm going to come in with a little bit of this yellow oxide, and I'm going to start thinking a little bit of my reaching petals. So I'm going to come in and just kind of give a little bit, and you see I'm just turning the brush and just pulling in just a little area of kind of giving the idea of petals, and it kind of trains my brain is starting to see, okay, so there's going to be some petals, reaching petals, alrighty? And then I can come in and it's like, well, I kind of want, let's see, I have some color going over that side. I might be okay with all of that. I really like this color working up into my center and giving me some variation. That looks kind of nice. You can come in with a little bit more of the red violet and just deepen the deepest, darkest parts of that center. Okay, and if you feel like you want a cool part of it, part of your rose, you could come in and just put a little bit, so there's no discourse between the warms and cools. You could add just a little bit more of that red violet color out to the side. Alrighty. Now, I'm thinking I'm ready to start working towards kind of putting some mottled of lighter colors. So I'm going to work up a little lighter, and I'm going to I pulled down some yellow oxide. It had a little bit, still had some of that red violet into my brush, so it did kind of give me a dirtier color than what I wanted. So I rinsed it off, pinch wiped, and then picked up Hansa and put it down the pile, and now I've picked up white, okay? I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, well, you know, I want to kind of give myself some guidelines as to where my petals are going to go, or where my where I'm going to establish some of this movement onto the bowl of my rose. So just put some color, strike it in, and move it around. I'm starting to shape the front of that rose. You can see that, okay? Now, for me, I'm not real huge fan of having that harsh line. And so I will tend to come in and soften it. So I'm going to come in and just kind of pull that towards my center, into my center, just to soften that just a little bit. Okay. And you'll kind of figure out different tricks for what works for you as you go along and as you paint more and more roses. Alrighty. I'm coming in with a little bit lighter butter color. Every time I add white, I'm picking up a little bit more yellow in my brush so that I don't get it too, I don't want to get it too white. I want to keep it kind of leaning towards that yellow side. I'm just transitioning over and kind of looking to say, okay, my rose needs some movement of that light out that on the side. I'm going to wet my brush again, rinse it, pinch wipe. I'm going to come in, I just want to restate my bowl again. So I'm going to come in and restate that again because it seems very, very dry, and I'm also losing my bowl. All right, so I just restated it. All right, lots of contrast. Then I'm going to come in again, since I have a lot of that red underlying in my brush. I'm going to come in, rinse it off, come back in, make sure I pick up some more yellow, and I want to come in and just kind of start pushing just a little bit more movement. Now, my paint, I can see I'm going to have a little bit of a problem because my paint is super wet right through there. So I'm going to have to let that tack up. And this is when you're working on a composition. This is when it really is helpful to be working on a composition, because you're able to work a couple roses at a time, or 3 roses or 4 roses, whatever you have in your composition. I'm going to go ahead and just put some movement up into my rose. I'm going to take the same brush and just kind of lift out, all right, just to give it some interest, and just take my finger and reestablish that bowl, redefine it. Okay, movement. Excuse me. I'm going to turn it over just so you can see the reaching petal, and I'm going to start looking at taking some of I'm going to start with that yellow oxide first, very toned, with some white, and I'm going to come down and just kind of pull some petals, give the idea. And I'm going to use my finger because the large brush picks up quite a bit of paint. You have to remember that, okay? It does pick up a lot of paint. So, you can overstate it and then push it into position, deposit, push it in and out. Don't forget, you can also pull the color out. That gives a different edge over on the other side that you're going to have lost and found edges. See, that looks kind of nice. I like that. I may have wanted to actually pull that a little further. So, all right. Excuse me, I think it's time for a little sip of coffee. All right, there we go. Now, that's really starting to take some nice shape. Now, if you're only working on a single rose and you're doing a little bit of practice, you can take and start working on establishing some of your greens, your leaves, negative painting underneath while some of that is tacking up. Okay, so I can come in and I might say, I might want some green contrast right under my rose, and look how far back I am on my brush. Okay, I'm not choked up on my brush very far. And I'm just going to put some greens. I love for the greens to kind of come into my rose just a little bit. And I can pick up just a little bit more dark. Dioxazine and pine green make a really pretty, very dark. It can overwhelm, so be careful, how dark you get it. But in some of those darkest areas, I think it makes a very nice contrast green, okay? So you don't want to put it everywhere, but in your focal area and where you would have some of your contrast to kind of set off your rose just a little bit, that's good, okay? Now, I'm looking at my rose and it's starting to set up a little bit except for up in that area, but I am going to come in again and I am going to again restate my bowl right through this area, okay? Put the paint in, push it into position. And this is how I get things super soft. I know I've had some people comment, my goodness, your roses in the exchange is so very soft. I deposit the paint with a large brush with this technique and then use my fingers. I mean, you can see my hands, okay? I use my fingers. Don't forget to pinch wipe, okay? Because once you have green on your finger and you push into yellow, you will notice it, okay? Now, I feel like I'm ready to, continue to work on some of that lighter movement and establishing the front of my rose. So I'm going to come in again, you should see it, with the same yellows, but I'm going to do a little bit more of that Hansa, and I'm going to pick up quite a bit of white, okay? Quite a bit of white. And remember, now I'm going to start thinking about fat over lean. So I'm going to come in with a little bit thicker paint, and I'm using the corner of my brush when I work up around and more, every single aspect of my brush as I'm working through this, okay? I know how to use the corner of my brush, the side of my brush. You don't have to always have it just that full on flat brush, okay? And that's what's so nice about these techniques is that it really teaches you how to use the full everything in your toolbox with regard to one brush. It really, you start thinking about it, and it does, for me, it's starting to become, second nature too, okay? Now, I'm loving that, and looking at time, I'm like, remember, the quicker you paint it, the nicer it will be. Don't play around with it. So I'm ready to come in for some of the highlight reaching petals, and I might, I have an area here, so I'm going to say, okay, I want to push, maybe a second layer of a petal right in that area. Maybe another highlight. I'm picking up some goobers in my paint, which, that just adds texture, right? So you can leave them, okay? And that gives me a second level right there, another row. And I might want to just pull something in right through here, okay? And I'm going to turn that over, all right? And be careful that your rose doesn't grow out super duper wide, okay? Be cognizant of that as you're painting. Be very aware. Now, I'm really liking that. It's got a very buttery feel to it, but, it's going with the style of what we're painting right now, so that's kind of nice, kind of pretty. I'm going to pull over and add just a little more white to my paint that I had here. Okay, my Hansa yellow, sorry, I got a little distracted with what I was doing. Hansa yellow, got to think here, clarity. And then I'm going to add a little more white to it. And you can scoop with this brush and pick up a little bead, if you will, on that tip, okay? Got a little bead. Scoop like a little shovel. And I'm going to come in, and my touch is super, super light. I have very little pressure on my brush right now. Very little pressure. Okay, and I'm just putting some light movement, alrighty? And that starts giving you the idea of some lighter petals and working the front of that bowl. I think I want to get a little more of the Hansa. And I might have to pick up just a touch of water just so my paint, because mine's been sitting out all day, or at least, half the day. So it's a little thicker than what you're probably used to. So if that happens, you can make it move. I love the thickness though, okay? Now I'm going to pull, there's no petals. I'm just thinking the movement of what my rose need. What does my rose need? That looks kind of nice. Very, very casual. Very casual. Okay. I'm going to turn it over again and look at some of these petals and say, well, I really think I want to like pull a little extra highlight on that one and then shove it back a little bit. You can use your fingers or you can use your brush to lift it out. You can get a smaller brush and lift it back out as well. That's starting to establish those reaching petals. And then I'm going to come across that front. I'm really, really liking what I have. Now, I'm not afraid to call this one done, except for I think I want to brighten just a little bit. I'd like to brighten up a little bit of my center. So Hansa yellow, or even your yellow oxide would work with your brown madder. Then add just a little bit of red violet to that, and it just gives you a little bit more intensity. I got a little bit of white somehow. Let me get rid of that. And it gives you a little bit of intensity that you can take and pull a little bit more life. I like the life over into my the center of my flower. Okay, see, that's kind of pretty. Then I can come in with just my yellow oxide and start on the opposite side because it's a little more toned while everything's wet, and I can get some nice soft intensity differences there. Then I can add, if you'd like, you can go, you just got to see what yours needs. If you feel like, and I'm rocking and rolling, okay? I'm rocking and rolling with the corner of my brush, okay? Rocking and rolling with the corner of my brush. And I'm going to pinch white. And I'm going to pick up a little of this color I was using out on my edges, out on my reaching petals, and I'm going to put that, kind of mix those together, kind of like a tone in between the two, and just kind of squish that around just a little bit. If you get a little too much and you want to restate your center again, you can. Back and forth just really gives it lots of depth to me, and it also gives it lots of life, okay? So I love just working my fingers back and forth. I'm not afraid of the color. There's something else you can do if you get down to this part, and you'll see some warms or reds or restating of colors. It looks like it's up under some of my yellows. I will come in and just kind of thin down some of my color that I was using up in the center now, and come over the whole side of my rose. Now don't freak out, okay? I'm doing that very casually. See how that gives that some depth on that? It's a little thin, but I don't want to use the word thin because my paint, it's like I'm controlling the thickness of my paint, and the pressure on my brush. The pressure is what's super critical on this step. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit more of my yellow oxide into some of the highlights that I already had, because I don't want this as light over here. And I'm just going to come back in and just kind of work a little bit of color into some of that some of that red that I just established, okay? Just a little bit back and forth, just to give myself some lost and found edges. That looks nice. And I can come back in again with a little more highlight, and you can go back and forth with this, and you can let it start tacking up for you, and then you can come back and, as it tacks up, you can see what your flower needs. If it needs you, that works out really well too. If you have to come back and just kind of tweak some of your highlights or tweak some of your movement, if you don't feel like your color was moving very well, or if it died just a little bit, you can do that as well, even as it starts to dry. That's not a problem. Now I have a little bit of discord between that yellow and those reaching petals there, the far reaching. So I'm just going to pick up a little of that yellow oxide into my brush, the brush that's dirty with some of the highlights that I'm adding, and I'm going to push and pull. All right. Get it back over on camera for you. Then I'm going to go into my greens again, And I'm using yellow oxide into that pine green, and I'll pick up just a little bit of that red just to tone it, okay? And you can come in underneath again, but you can also push in to some of that reaching petals. And if you feel like your reaching petals got a little bit too, they're too reaching for the size of your rose, that is also what you can use there to kind of, negative paint them and define them, if that goes with the style and with what you're looking at right now, okay, with this part of your rose. And I have loved to come in and just kind of casually muck it up just a little bit. It makes it super casual. I love that feel. And after you do that, then you want to come in and, let me get it on camera for you. You want to come in and pick up a little bit of your reaching petal color and define just a little bit of your edge, okay? Just a little bit of your edge. There you go. All right, so there you have. That is a large brush. Just a quick demonstration for you. You come back in and you could start working some of your leaves. I didn't go into any of that, but you can come in with some greens, using some of the tones and everything obviously that you have that you've been using in your rose. You can come in. I love to set off a dark shadow and then come in and just have some very casual movements of lighter green if I'm painting a super casual composition. So, it's kind of like, well, it's kind of a leaf. It is a leaf. I'm suggesting the leaf. Oh, and I should also show you some reflective light. I see something else I feel like this rose could actually use. And so I'm going to pick up a little bit more yellow oxide. And I'm going to come in. I just feel like it could use just a little bit more, especially if it's the queen of the composition. It could probably use just a little bit more movement and definition out and around. Whoop, I had red on my finger, so that's going to look nice. Yeah, happy accidents. There we go. That's a nice happy accident. I really like that. Let's calm it down just a little bit. It's a little stark out there. There we go. And so that gives me, a little bit of the movement. Now, I do, if you looked at the table that I shared, I do have some reflective, I like to call it reflective light, if you will. And lavender, purple, and yellow are opposites on the color wheel. So you can come in with some, when you're all done in a composition, come in with dioxazine, tone it down. Now, it will tone down really, really quick. So I put yellow in it, and I got a very, very dull lavender pretty darn quick. So if you want to punch it back up just a little, just pick up a little more diox, and I want it to be a light value, okay? And I'll probably come in, wet that. If you get it too wet, that's probably okay. I'm not sure yet if that has enough intensity, so let me get an more intense color over to the side. And let me tilt that up for you. Let me put it under camera here. Can you see that? See how I have a dull purple? All right, that's because purple and yellow are opposites on the color wheel, so that is why I reached for purples instead of blues for my reflective light. And this is more dioxazine into it, so it's a little more intense. I replaced some of that intensity. And you can come in. It's really nice. Now, it depends on your composition, but I just wanted to show you what a little bit of the opposite, the complementary color will do for a flower or for your composition. And I might have some other things going on that I would streak it through. I have been known to actually take just a hint of this back into the back of my flower or the center even. And if you get too much, that looks good to me. If you get too much, you can always go back and restate your center if you need to, okay? So there's some reflective light. I'm giving you the impression, you can see where, all of this would start coming together as a composition, but I told you I wasn't doing a composition, but I have a hard time making myself stop. You can take a brown. This is where you could come in, if you have a lot going on, if you needed some stems, say I have another rose and everything going, happening, it just, you give the impression. This is just giving a lot of impression, okay? I'm doing all of this with just this one brush, all right? Great fingers, one brush, some paper towels, a board, and some wonderful acrylics. It's, it's just awesomeness in a tube. And, it just takes work, okay? And I could change all of this up and close up a side and, but I just wanted to show you just a real opened rose. But I'll go back in and I can come back in and negative paint and soften some edges and really give it a real soft feel, in a composition, whatever works, whatever I need. My composition would tell me, obviously, what I need, so... Okay, well, hopefully you've enjoyed that. So anyway, how is that? Maybe a little longer than I intended, but hopefully you learned a few things with that. The large brush, you just gotta be able, what it does is it kind of forces you to learn how to relax, work with the brush, control the moisture, control the amount of paint. Everything about it, to me, this really works. And then add your fingers for, if you feel like you need to, drag or shear a color or whatever you need to do in it. All right. So that is all I have for you though in this episode. Now, go back and try to paint this yourself, okay? We can do this with reds. We can do any color, obviously. And when you change hues, it kind of changes the whole feeling. And you'll find as you're going along your journey, as you're learning to paint roses, that every time you change something, it's almost like relearning how to ride the bike a little bit. But once you get on it and you get going, you're like, oh, and it kicks in. It's just that now it's in lavender, now it's in red. And then you'll want to change your style. And then you could go back, don't forget with a number 10 flat or number 8 and add a little bit more detail if that's what your composition, your technique, your brush calligraphy calls for. Okay, hopefully this helps a little bit. Watch it a couple times through, and I'll upload a composition for you. If not, before the end of the week, it'll be next Friday's coffee chat. Okay, we'll do that. So thanks for joining me again for Painting Tips and Coffee with DeAnn. I've had a great time. Hopefully you have. And, stay safe out there. Get some painting done. If you need a 3/4 inch flat, I know where you can get these. I'm fully stocked, okay? Global Art Fusion flats. And the short handle, they come in long handle too, and that gives you a whole different feel at an easel to paint roses with a long handle. That's another approach to it. Maybe we'll do that in a couple weeks. We'll paint another rose or so, do a lesson with a long handle. That'd be kind of fun. You have a great day, evening, wherever you're at in the world, and I hope to see you next time right here on this channel. Subscribe, please subscribe, and keep up with what's going on. Check out my social media. I'm on Facebook, DeAnn's Art Studio, and my Instagram is DeAnn's Art Studio and Gallery, and we'll see you there. Take care.